This is episode 124 of the Trauma Coaching for Latter-day Saints podcast, 5 Reasons You Can't Rest. I'm your host, Danita Bremer. I'm on a mission to help members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints heal from trauma. I'm on my healing journey, and I'm a triple certified life coach. Take a deep breath, slip your AirPods in, and come on a walk outdoors or start on some chores with me and learn how to heal and find lasting joy. How many times have I heard myself say, why can't I just relax? So many times. So many times I cannot even count. And it is also something that I hear my clients and even people who I don't work with say, it's like, I just can't let myself relax until fill in the blank, right? So I've been thinking about this concept from a nervous system point of view. And I came up with 5 reasons you can't rest. 5 reasons you can't let yourself rest. For some of these reasons, I'm going to talk a bit about what the solution is. And for others, I'm just going to give you the reason. So the first reason why you can't allow yourself to rest is because of your belief about what might happen if you do. We take this idea that, like, if I sit down, then I'll never get anything done, right? And I've been hearing my clients and also myself say this, and I realized that what we're saying is, if I sit down for 1 minute, I will never again in the future of my life accomplish anything. How ridiculous is that, right? I'm calling this maximizing the results. We take one little snippet of like sitting down for 1 minute and we take it to the maximum, right? If I sit down for 1 minute, then I'll be sitting for the rest of eternity. And if I'm sitting for the rest of eternity, then I will never accomplish anything. First of all, you won't be sitting for the rest of eternity, because who wants to sit forever? Like, how often are we sitting here in our seats and we're like, I just got to get up and walk around and stand up and move my body? Like, in no universe will you be confined to your bed or the couch for the rest of eternity. And second of all, even if you were, let's say you have a disability and you have to sit in bed or on your couch 24/7. Does that mean you'll never get anything done? I can actually get quite a bit done telling people what to do and how to do it from the couch. So just be onto yourself about that. And I would say the solution to this belief about what might happen and maximizing those ideas in our head, is that you just need to prove yourself wrong. We need to listen to ourselves say, I can't sit down because then I will never get anything done the rest of the day, to, all right, well, let's see, right? Let's sit down for 1 minute or 5 minutes and just take a little rest. And let's just see what happens. Maybe on day 1, when you do this, you're like, oh, this feels so good. Yes, I want to stay sitting, or I want to go curl up in bed. And really, honestly, I think that's just a sign that you need more rest, right? Most of the time, something will happen. Something will come along in which you'll have to stand up and go do something. And then you're wrong. So whenever you hear yourself say, like, oh, I can't sit down because then I won't get anything done, you just say, no, that's false. We're wrong. If I sit down for a minute or 5 minutes, or God forbid, an hour, I will still get things done later. Okay, so that's reason number 1, your belief about what might happen and you taking those imagined results and maximizing them, right? The second thing that I see that happens a ton with myself, with my clients, is that rest is associated with a negative emotion or multiple negative emotions that you don't want to feel. I see guilt and shame as being the most common. Like, if I sit down, if I let myself rest, then all the guilt comes up, right? Then like, oh, I'm such a terrible person. I shouldn't be sitting here. I should be teaching my kids homeschool. I should be making dinner, like whatever it is, right? It's like, I'm not allowed to ever take a break or take time for myself. And if I do, then all this guilt and shame comes up. And for this, in addition to the proving yourself wrong, like I do want you to just take a break for 5 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, and put the guilt and the shame on the shelf and just be like, nope, this is my time. I'm just going to rest and I'm not going to feel bad about it. And prove yourself wrong, right? There, you can do that with this particular reason as well. But more so, I want you to focus on the fact that if it's a feeling that's coming up, then you're going to have to feel your way out of it. And most likely, you will need some extra support and resources in order to do that. Because most of us, if we sit down for 5 minutes and the guilt and the shame comes up of, oh, I should be hanging out with my kids, or I should be cooking dinner, or I said I was going to clean out the freezer, or whatever it is, most of us are like, oh, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that awful, terrible feeling. And so being able to just allow yourself to sit down and rest might mean that you kind of have to feel that feeling for a little bit. And if that's the case, you might need some support. You might need somebody to be supporting you in it's okay to feel guilty right now. It's okay if you feel some shame coming up. This is still good for you. You can do it, right? That's what I do in coaching if you want to come join me. That's reason number 2. Rest might be associated with negative emotion that you don't want to feel. So then, of course, you never let yourself rest so that you don't have to feel those emotions. The irony is that most of the time we're feeling negative emotions even when we don't let ourselves rest, right? It's different negative emotion like exhaustion, maybe frustration or anger, right? Like I have to do everything. The truth is you don't have to do everything, but you can't let yourself slow down and rest because you're so scared of feeling guilt or shame or some other negative emotion. All right. Number 3 is that your rest is not actually restful. You may have attempted to rest. And if it's not actually restful, then you feel like, well, what's the point? Like I took a nap, or I sat down and scrolled my phone, or whatever rest looks like for you. And then I felt just as tired. So I may as well keep working, keep going, and not rest, right? So a couple of things that I've learned that I wanted to mention. The first is that I wear an Oura ring. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the video. This is what my Oura ring looks like. And I was a bit resistant to getting an Oura ring at first. They're a little pricey. I think they're $300. Sometimes you can find a $50 off coupon. And I was just like, do I need another thing to help me? Right. But I have loved my Oura ring. I did have a little blip where the charger stopped working and they had to send me a new charger. But I've been wearing my Oura ring for 10 months, and it is so amazing the data that is collected and what I'm learning about myself, and particularly about my sleep. So I have struggled, like I feel like my whole life I've needed more sleep than most people. But it turns out that if you look at the stats of my sleep, like my resting heart rate and my heart rate variability, which are 2 indicators of how restful your sleep is, my sleep isn't actually very restful. So that kind of makes sense. I'm like, oh my gosh, my whole life I have made sense. So that's one thing. I can give you a link. I don't get paid or anything, but I think if like 5 people sign up through my link for an Oura ring, then they're going to like send me a fancy sleep mask or something like that. So I don't give you my link to, benefit off of that in any large way. But other than I legitimately love wearing an Oura ring. I love the data that it's giving me and how I'm learning about my sleep and my rest. And it also tracks steps, so I like it. The second thing that I've learned about rest and restfulness is that there are different types of rest. Sleep and napping, they're just one type, and actually one subtype of one type. So I'm going to drop a link to an article about the 7 types of rest. And it is from a doctor. Her name is Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith. And she kind of came up with this idea of these 7 different types of rest. And I think it's brilliant. So I totally want to give her credit. I will drop the link to that article. It is a Goop article. I find that it is very well written. It is concise. It makes sense. So I'm just going to hit here in this podcast episode, the 7 types of rest to give you an idea of what we mean. The first type of rest is physical rest, but within physical rest, there's active physical rest and there's passive physical rest. So active rest is like sleeping or napping. Passive physical rest is like going for a walk or doing yoga or stretching, right? It's this idea of our bodies need to change. When we're sleeping for too long, our bodies get sore and we want to get up and move. And when we're moving or stressing the physical capacity of our body for too long, then we want to sit down and rest, right? We need change and we need to be dynamic in our movement. That's the first kind of rest. The second kind of rest is mental rest. It's when you find that your mind is super busy and it's running all the time and you can't shut it off. You need mental rest. One way to do this is meditation. I know a lot of people who have very active minds. My husband is one of them, and they, have quote unquote tried meditation and can't do it. But if you stick with it, I promise you, it will bring results. The third kind of rest that we need is social rest. So social rest is the rest that we need when we need to be around people who energize us. And it depends on you and what you need, in particular, your social preferences for what energizes you. Oftentimes we live and work with people who drain us, right? If you're a parent and you have kids, especially young kids, they need something from you all the time. That is going to be socially draining, right? And so we need to be around adults and have lively conversation and that kind of thing. That is social rest. It's not like I need to be away from people. It's more like I need to be around a different kind of people that give me something different socially. Number 4 type of rest is spiritual rest. So spiritual rest is the rest that we get when we are kind of living in alignment to our own values, right? Part of this is feeling like we belong, feeling like our work is meaningful, that we're giving back to the community. So I kind of think oftentimes people who are in burnout, like a typical, like I have a corporate job and I'm just burnt out, it's probably because they aren't feeling like their work is super meaningful, right? So there's more to say about that. And there's more to say about all of these kinds of rest, but I'm going to keep going here. The 5th kind of rest is sensory rest. This is the one that at this point in my life, I tend to need the most. Sensory rest is like if you have a lot of inputs, right? If you're on the computer a lot or on your phone a lot, you're like constantly looking at light. If you are in a noisy environment, if like I have a kid who really likes to listen to classic rock. And so whenever I'm in the car with him, he turns on classic rock and it's like too much for my sensory system. So all the sensory input, sometimes we just need to disconnect from all of the sensory input and go somewhere where there's less or different kinds of sensory input. So, instead of being at the computer, going for a walk outside and noticing the clouds and the sky and the birds and and, whatever, like the green grass, right? That's a different kind of sensory input. So I think probably most of the world needs sensory rest, but I could be wrong. Number 6 kind of rest is emotional rest. And emotional rest refers to the rest that we experience when we feel like we can be real and authentic, like we don't have to manage or fake our emotions, right? We can be angry if we're angry. We can be sad if we're sad, that kind of thing. And sometimes we don't have a place to do that. I think that's one of the brilliant reasons to hire a coach, is simply from the fact of you get to be whoever and whatever you are. And I have zero judgment of that. Like, I know that every single emotion has a place and a purpose. And so you don't have to apologize for crying or for being angry or for being confusing or anything like that. We carry a lot of emotional labor, and sometimes we feel like we have to hide that. And so to have a place where you can put that down, right? And then the 7th and final type of rest, at least according to Dr. What's her name again? Dalton Smith, is creative rest. So, creative rest is when we can have an opportunity to appreciate beauty in any form. And when we have an opportunity to be creative in any form, right? To have a hobby or, art, music, dance, those kinds of things. We are as humans naturally creators. We all create in some way, unless we tell ourselves that we can't, or we don't make time for it, right? And so it's more than just like being an artist, like putting pencil to paper or sculpting or something like that, but it's having an opportunity to create in whatever way that means to you, right? Most of us need that kind of rest quite a bit. Okay, so that is the number 3 reason why you can't allow yourself to rest. It's because your rest is not restful. And so then you think, well, what's the point? I shouldn't even be doing this. Okay. Number 4 reason why your rest is not restful is because you are stuck in an active response. So thinking about the nervous system, this is being stuck in that fight or flight mode. Having lots of activation, lots of energy in your nervous system, in your body. And oftentimes when we have lots of activation, we tend to label it anxiety or anger. We think we need to calm down. But actually, when we have lots of activation, the way to metabolize that activation is to move, is to actually physically move your body. That's how we metabolize activation, that active energy in us. Sometimes you will find yourself saying, like, I just got to do something. And we think that means I got to sit at my computer and accomplish some work. So just kind of be onto yourself. And I would really encourage you to play with this. When you hear yourself saying, I just got to do something, then go for a walk or pace around the room or do some push-ups or jumping jacks or something like that, right? I love the exercise of pushing against the wall. Now, you're not going to do anyone any harm, but when you push against the wall, as if you're like really legitimately trying to move the wall, your muscles have to activate and it requires energy. Even though you're not going anywhere and the wall's not going anywhere, it helps you metabolize some of that energy. And a lot of my clients also really love this too. You can walk in place or jog in place. Like, this doesn't mean that you have to like go to the gym. Movement is movement. It's not necessarily exercise, right? So if you are stuck in an active response, in this sort of feeling of like, I got to do something, wanting to fight or wanting to get away, what you really need are resources, right? like when we're expending energy, it requires resources from us. So that might be when you want to go eat something because you're actually burning energy. Side note here, I recently read something that said that people who play chess burn like more calories than people who run. So think about that. Like moving our bodies is not the only way to burn energy, but movement is the way to metabolize this active energy. Okay, so that's reason number 4 why you can't allow yourself to rest, because you're stuck in that active response. And probably there's something preventing you from coming down out of that stress cycle, something inside of you or something outside of you that doesn't allow you to come down. And that's where I would recommend working with a practitioner who understands the nervous system and understands how to know what state you're in to help meet you in your needs of that state, because each state has different needs. Number 5 and final reason why you can't allow yourself to rest, and this one's going to sound a little counterintuitive, is that you're actually stuck in a freeze response. Now, I hear what you're saying, like, wait, if I'm in freeze response, isn't that a form of rest? And my answer is no, not really. Because what a freeze response is actually like holding energy like in a box, so to speak. If we have all this active energy, but it's overwhelming to us, then we just pack it away into a little box, but then we have to kind of use energy to keep the box closed, right? So being in a freeze response is actually requiring you to manage your energy, which requires energy, right? So yes, a freeze response looks like depression. Often it looks like this shutdown, like I have no motivation, I can't do anything, I just want to curl up in a ball. But it's because the body has all of this active energy that it is storing away. And that is the definition of the freeze response, right? And it requires energy. So in order to come out of that freeze response, the best resource for the freeze response is heat, like physical heat, putting heating pads on, drinking hot drinks or eating soup or stews, sitting in the sun. Like if any of these things, if you're like, oh my gosh, I love soup, I love sitting in the sun, I love getting in the hot tub, I love curling up in bed under a warm blanket, probably means like if this is like all of these kind of heat related things, if that resonates with you, like, oh, I love all of these things, then likely you are probably in a freeze response and your body is wanting to move toward that heat in order to come out of the freeze response, right? But we have to be really careful when coming out of the freeze response, because when we thaw that cube of ice, on the inside of that cube is all of the energy, all of that active energy that put us in the freeze response in the first place. So again, I recommend working with a practitioner, and you need to like do this very gently with lots of support. Yes. Okay, so that's the 5th reason you can't let yourself rest, is because you're stuck in the freeze response. And it's kind of the same as your rest isn't restful. When you're in that freeze response, when you sleep, when you rest, your body is doing a lot of work on the inside. So it's not actually very restful, right? Which is why I love the work that I do. I love helping people slowly, with lots of support, come out of these freeze responses or come down off of that stress response, because it actually changes you. It legitimately helps you feel different in your body. So speaking of the work that I do, I currently have 1 opening for private coaching. So if this episode or any of the other episodes have spoken to you, I would highly encourage you to go to my website, danitabremmer.com, and click on the button that says free call. Sign up for a free call, I think is what it says. And let's just chat about where you are and what you need, whether you're more in that active response or you're more in that freeze response. and we can just see if coaching with me is even right for you. And it might not be. But if you're listening to this podcast and you're enjoying it, then I think that leans more toward working with me would probably be right, as long as, the cost and the schedule and all of that kind of stuff align with what you need. So I would encourage you to reach out. I only have 8 private coaching spots, and oftentimes my clients re-sign with me. So I'll have some more openings, I think. If my current clients don't resign, I'll have more openings in May, but this is my one spot right now. So if you want to jump on that, come sign up for a free session. And then the other thing I wanted to encourage you to do today is that I would just love to talk to you. One of the best ways for me to create episodes on this podcast is for me to answer your questions directly. So I'm curious what you are wondering about trauma, about your specific situation. I would love to hear. And that would be really helpful to me to be able to answer any questions or anything that you're confused about, anything that maybe I didn't explain clearly. You can schedule a free session for that and we can chat. Or if getting on Zoom is not up your alley, then just send me an email. It's danita@danitabremmer.com. That's enough for now, and so are you. Thank you so much for listening. Truly, it means a lot to me. If you learned something or this episode helped you in any way, would you please leave a rating and a written review in your podcast app so that this podcast can help others in a similar way? Or if it's easier for you, I would love it if you would share this episode with a friend. Until next time, go be yourself, get some rest if you can, and follow the spirit.